Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
You are what you watch. Hello, my name is Harriton Watko. Welcome to our program. Today we're going to discuss basically xenophobia, if we even are one. Meaning xenophobia, fear of, an unreasonable fear of, in this case, Sino-China. Do we have fear, unreasonable fear towards China? Interestingly enough, early this morning there was a news conference on, together with the United States, wherein we are starting what we call some type of arrangement or working arrangement with America. Obviously, eventually with Japan. As we well know, Japan and America are going to come to some mutual defense treaty against the Chinese. And as you very well know, and if you are on Facebook, there is definitely a xenophobia that exists on Facebook. And everyone is screaming out loud, don't take our property even though you already have. The problem is, or the issues are, kaya ba natin labanan ng China? Tiklop na lang tayo, we just allow our neighbors to come in and take whatever they want. They start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, before you know it. They're in Ermita, they're in Malate, they're in Makati, and they're everywhere else, and we're paying homage and tribute to them. Now, this morning, part of that press conference, I found 3 words which are being used over and over again. This was presided over by the DFA, Alberto Del Rosario, and Voltaire Gasmin of Defense. Interesting enough, the 3 words are modality, mutuality, and transparency. So I looked up the word modality. Ano kaya ibig sabihin talaga nito? In what context are they trying to use it? And basically, I found it's basically to conform, a tendency to conform. A tendency to conform to what? To patterns, as it says, based on its definition. Conform to patterns. What patterns? Let's look at mutuality. So mutually, ibig sabihin, what is yours is mine, mine is yours, whatever, hati-hati, hating kapatid, meaning an equilibrium of sorts. And of course, the last is transparency. And interestingly enough, when the U.S. counterpart was being asked in the same press conference, they said, there will be no negotiation with media. Now, pag sinabi mo no negotiation with media, walang transparency. So here we are. The press conference that started out today will actually ensue tomorrow, wherein they will have a panel that they have created together with the DOJ, with about 3 or 4 other Philippine agencies, including the AFP, of course. And then from there on, continue until they have a working agreement. The issues on the table, obviously, are, 1, the Visiting Forces Agreement, the Mutual Defense Treaty, and, of course, the Constitution. Why don't we inject something that's even more complex? The nuclear, the ability to bring in nuclear arms into our waters, into our property. If I'm not mistaken, this is against the Constitution. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 weeks ago, we had a guest that started this conversations. We had former Congressman Roilo Golez, and he was also former NSA. He was very knowledgeable about all the many issues happening with China. And I've asked him to come on today again, but this time on a one-on-one. Hello, Congressman.
Maraming salamat. Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat. At least,
thank you. That's a very good introduction.
Did you like that?
Oh, yes, of course. Very comprehensive.
Well, but straight to the point, issues, because I'm very much in Facebook. Alam mo, well, at least the personalities that I've joined or have joined me, alam mo naman, Facebook group yan eh. The xenophobia is real, and there is a definite hate, not even a fear. There's definitely a definite hate, and many of them saying we should stand up to China. I guess the questions I'll throw back to you today, because you're more in the know. kaya ba ng Pilipinas? Kaya ba natin to actually repel China, or is this a wrong thought? 2 weeks ago, you told us, no, it is right, we have to. You made that very clear, and you're very, very firm. Maybe now we can discuss the issues. Kaya ba talaga natin? Or are we just picking a fight with the village bully only to get pulverized?
Well, the question of kaya ba, we sing the national anthem very often in
Yeah, I know.
in every
Okay.
occasion.
Agreed,
It's
but-
ingrained in our heart, in our mind, and that's almost like taking an oath. In the Constitution, there is something about territorial integrity, sovereignty.
Okay, agreed.
Ang mamatay ng dahil
Dahil
sa
sa
iyo.
iyo.
Oo. Di ka pasisiil. Sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiil. And we've done this in the past, even against superior forces like the
The Spanish,
Spaniards, and then of
The
course
Japanese,
the Americans.
the Americans.
Thousands died fighting a high-tech army. The Americans, the Japanese also, in spite of the fact that they were like a steamroller at the start of the Second World War. Young men joined, went to Bataan.
Yes, the march,
I
died.
understand that some of them were delayed in joining their units. But when that happened, some of them took private transportation, took a boat
Para
going to
sumali.
Bataan para sumali, para hindi sila maiwan sa march of history. And many of them died.
but we were pulverized.
Well, but in the end, we overcame. No, but in this issue, it's not as simple as Philippines against a giant. In a situation today, there is always a tendency, and it's not only now, but if you look at the history of warfare, of conflict, international conflict, even a small country is able to generate or arrange some kind of an alliance. Like when France was superpower of Europe at that time, and England could not handle the land forces of France, they entered into an alliance with Prussia, with Russia, with Austria, and defeated
France.
the superpower of Europe at that time. Even a small country, like for example, Norway was a small country, Sweden, a small country in the Second World War, somehow survived. So
You're saying we can't
what's
prevail.
happening today, Harry, is I even make this comment. Sometimes China, by being too assertive, will on its own be the one to trigger these alliances, these coalitions against itself. I'm sure you've read the book by Barbara Tuchman, The March of Folly. Many countries have committed that folly of being too assertive, and in the process generating
their-
alliances. And alliances will normally end up bigger than the bully.
You were saying 2 weeks ago.
So in other words, I don't think we'll be here alone in dealing with the bully.
But our biggest ally that we're asking to come in are the very same people we kicked out 20 years ago, who we are rallying against. Well, you have people rallying in the U.S. Embassy on a daily basis, and then we have it in our Constitution. We can't even allow them to bring in their armaments, which they are. There's a lot of issues that are ongoing right there. These alliances that we're creating, of course, we're now luring in the Americans. If the Americans come in, without question, without a doubt, there is already the Allied forces coming into the Philippines, regardless of the others in Southeast Asia or even Europe coming in. Malaki na America because it's the strongest power in the world. And that will check China without a doubt. But we're also bringing in someone that we are beating. Di ba? We're beating up. Hindi ko maintindihan eh.
Don't be surprised, and don't find this mysterious. If you look at history again,
Okay.
there are so many interesting and sometimes self-contradicting events in history that sometimes defy logic. Oh, you're talking of the Philippines kicking out the United States bases.
Bases.
We're talking
92,
of permanent
yes, 91.
basing in 1991. But Vietnam is also in the sphere of the U.S. now. Vietnam, there was the Vietnam War,
That's
the
true.
10-year
They were fighting,
war.
yeah.
Japan is in the sphere of the U.S. and they clobbered each other from 1941 up to 1945. But
Correct.
now they're allies.
They're allies. They're
Yeah.
allies.
And
So,
just a few days ago, we celebrated another anniversary of Hiroshima. But while celebrating that, we must realize that notwithstanding that, the alliance between Japan and the United States has even become stronger because of China. What I'm saying is that it's China that is bringing it upon itself.
so the ends will qualify the means if necessary. In this case, the alliance with America. So whatever the greater interest will prevail.
That's right. The greater interest, the
Always.
security interest,
Security.
and it's not only Japan. You know, everybody is getting uncomfortable with the rise of China,
Yes.
and it's not a rise that's similar to the rise of the United States, for example, during the 18th, 19th century, especially
The
at the start of the
industrialization.
20th century. Their so-called White Fleet that went around the world, defeating the Spanish fleet here in Manila Bay, the entrance of Japan. But some people are looking at this rise as a non-benign rise, and this is evidenced by their assertiveness. Let me show you in our region what is happening.
Can we have the
Here's-
camera shoot in on this?
Yeah.
Ayan.
Here's
Maybe we can explain this.
the South China Sea,
Okay.
and
Give it a second. The camera will zoom in on this. There you go.
yeah,
All right.
yeah, disputed regions. And if you look at the history, you know, in 1999, almost 14 years ago, I delivered a privilege speech in Congress.
Okay.
And there, I cited what's happening, and I cited as the trigger of my privilege speech the fact that they were complaining about the grounding of a Navy LST in the Scarborough Shoal area, or what we the Philippines calls
Scarborough.
Bajo de Masinloc or
Bajo de
Panatag.
Masinloc.
So I said, why are they complaining? That's ours. That's within our exclusive economic zone. What business do they have? And in my speech, I already told them, I already talked about the apparent outward push of China in implementation of their so-called 9-dash lines. And this is can be seen from the picture. First, they took the Paracels in 1974, 1975, right after the Vietnam War. That was Vietnamese territory, and a lot of Vietnamese soldiers died there. And then, of course, they took over several islets, reefs inside the Spratlys, many of them inside our exclusive economic zone. In 1995, they took Mischief Reef.
Mischief
First,
Reef.
they said it's, you can see how unreliable they are, the deceit. They said, don't worry about this. These are just temporary shelters for fishermen, so don't worry. But after 4 or 5 years, they converted it into permanent structures, military structures. And now, in 1999, I said their next target, in my opinion, is Scarborough. We're not dealing here with a gentle panda, but we're dealing here with a fire-breathing dragon. And true enough, last year, they took over Scarborough. Now Scarborough is within our control. A few days ago, they expanded their 9-dash line into a 10-dash line.
Humaba na.
Ang line na yon is east of Taiwan. It does not affect our exclusive economic zone, but it defined a much bigger range. They're pushed outward. And in my opinion, the reason for this is that they have a very short coastline. They have a very small maneuvering room for their expanding navy. And if that's going to be the case, their navy is going to be very vulnerable. Their commerce, their trade would be very vulnerable to blockade, even by a power like Australia, for example. With a few submarines, they can strangle their commerce and trade.
China needs the South China Sea and that passage going down to Mindanao, obviously because by land they can't seem to cross and they need to get into the other side, which is the Indian Ocean, to get to the Middle East for oil. Without oil, China doesn't have the energy. or basically the energy for their boats or their planes to fly. And should you strangle that, there is no strength. Correct me if I'm wrong. So they're basically, why is it they're trying to own it, to assert their powers and their property when there's really no need, when there should be freedom of navigation for all? Anong takot nila? Ipitin silang Amerikano doon.
Well, historically, they made this claim in 1947, but this was a claim of the then Kuomintang government.
Which became
under
Taiwan.
Chiang Kai-shek. Yeah, 1947. 1949, the communists took over, but they also took over this claim. That's why there are two claims. This is the same claim that until now Taiwan is making.
Same claim.
That's right. They just inherited the claim, and they've been more assertive because now they have the power to do it.
Ang China, kailangan ba talaga nila yung Taiwan because of it being an island and because of its strategic location?
Well, I think it's political, it's strategic.
It's more political because
it's
of
a
the
core interest on their part.
But
And
for
that's-
their naval power, they don't require it. Masyadong
I
malapit.
I think they need that also.
They
Yeah.
also need it.
Because that will be like unsinkable aircraft carrier for them.
How about
with bases there?
Scarborough
In the Second
Shoal?
World War, Formosa then
Yes, Formosa,
was very
Taiwan.
important for the march towards Japan to take over to
That's
defeat
right,
Japan
that's right,
because it
that's
was
right.
used as
Stepping
an
stone
air base,
yun eh,
stepping
airbase.
stone. And the same applies until now.
Now, bakit kailangan nila? Ang layo-layo, it's across the ocean. It's across the China Sea. Papasok malapit sa Zambales. Di kaya napakalayo? I mean, why do they need that?
Malayo. It's about 800 nautical miles from, I'm talking of Scarborough or Bajo de Masinloc, or 800 nautical miles from their southernmost natural island. Not the islands that they grab like the Paracels from Hainan. And it's only about 120 nautical miles from Zambales, from Manila Bay. To us, it's very important. To them, it's extension of their space. You know, they want
For what? Naval para to rest?
naval,
to put their ammunition?
commerce, yes,
for commerce.
for protein, for the natural resources that can be.
But what is the
mentioned
interest?
that. I mentioned that in my speech in
Is it
1999.
military or is it natural resources? Because
Natural resources,
it's
all,
natural
all of
resource.
them, all of them.
All put
Military,
together.
Navy, I think they need maneuvering space. They cannot have a confined Navy just 200 nautical miles from their shoreline. They would have just like what happened to the German Navy in the First World War and also in the
Nasakal.
Second World War. Baltic fleet,
Baltic
it could
fleet.
be easily bottled up. Also the Russian Baltic fleet could be easily bottled up.
But surely the Chinese navigators or the Chinese strategic planners know that America will not allow it because America nga hindi pumipirma sa UNCLOS, di ba?
Yeah.
Gusto nila freedom of navigation rights because you've got the multiple fleets that continuously move. Ngayon nga, they call it multiple bases, floating bases.
Yeah.
Surely they know America is not going to allow it, and yet they exert themselves to where they are in the Philippines.
The term freedom of navigation has been repeated by several military leaders of the United States.
Tama
think
ba yun?
back, they always say freedom of navigation is very important. We'd like that to be assured. And if you look at this Palawan Passage, that's, we call that Palawan Passage. Historically, that is where about 200 big ships pass through every day,
They pass
representing about 50 to 60% of the world's commerce. Very vital, strategically vital to the allies of the United States, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, and even to China itself.
For
And the
trade.
Philippines.
For
trade.
even oil as well as oil.
Trade as well as for military purposes, naval purposes.
And yet China exerts itself. Parang there's a seeming disconnect with the way they foresee things or see things versus the rest of the world. We see why there's interest with the Americans. We see why there's strategic reasoning for holding on to these islands. Hindi ba nakikita ng China yan?
Well,
And they keep asserting themselves.
It's always like that. They test the waters. How far can they go? They've done that in Mischief Reef and nothing happened. Nobody has reacted. So now they're doing it again in Scarborough Shoal.
Since di tayo gumagalaw.
And I'm giving a warning right now that what they did in Mississippi Reef, converting that into a naval station, will surely be done in Scarborough Shoal or Bajo de Masinloc. And there, that is even a bigger place. That's about...
malaki na yun eh.
Malaki yan. Hindi ho yan maliit.
Kasi laki ng Quezon City daw yan
Kasi
eh.
laki ng Quezon City, 150 square kilometers.
Oh, kasi laki
And
nga,
you can
malaki na
put
yan. The whole base.
hundreds of ships inside. The depth of the lagoon inside Scarborough Shoal or Bajo de Masinloc is about 49 feet. A Chinese guided missile destroyer has a draft of only 31, so very comfortable.
Kaya.
Yeah, kahit na malalaking vapor, even a cruiser can go inside.
Let's go to the visiting forces agreement. The Americans are definitely here. They've already begun the allied forces. They're convening the allied forces. Obviously, we already know of Japan wanting to participate. And if I'm not mistaken, sometime 2 weeks ago, Vietnam has opened up interest in trying to come in. And this is development together with the Subic Naval Base, which is already set up. What's your take on that? Ano nangyayari dyan? You agree with it, definitely.
I'm in favor of that. You know, we have an alliance with the U.S.
That's the mutual defense.
There's a mutual defense treaty.
Yes.
So what are allies for if we're not going to allow them to visit us temporarily, pass through? What kind of friendship is that? If we are friends, for example, Harry, and then I don't allow you to park in front of my property, we're not friends.
Pero,
if I don't allow you inside my home.
Pero may constitution yan, ha? May problema sa constitution because the American fleets are nuclearly armed. May nuclear weaponry yan. Di ba bawal sa constitution natin yan? Number one. Number two, we kick them out. Three, they're basically, they were or they have been in Mindanao. We have extended the visiting forces agreement. But of course, we receive no longer any compensation. When we had the bases, we were making at least measly $55 million a year.
More, about 200 billion.
200 million about.
Yes.
But the other allies of America, they run in the billions annually.
Yeah.
There was a request that we bring it up, keep the bases, and get some 5 billion. Sana okay yun. US dollars. Miski pa paano makakatulong. Then we won't have this problem. None of the Americans coming here, maybe let's limit that discussion. Aatras kaya China?
It's hard to predict how countries would behave given a certain trigger, a certain stimulus. It's difficult. I've always been saying that sometimes a small reason may trigger a big response, but a big reason may not even trigger a small response. It's hard to predict how a nation would behave given certain situations and certain events. But it's better to ask, what are they capable of doing?
That's the right question.
Yeah, what are they
Strategic
capable? Just like
you got a great strategic mind. Tama yan, tama
just
yan.
like when you deal with a person holding a gun, you don't ask whether he will fire or not, but whether that gun can kill you. Yeah, that
is
is
it far
the
enough?
question.
Will it reach me?
Yeah. You don't miscalculate. In other words, you say, well, you have to be prudent of what they're capable of doing. They have a large military. They're building up. They have an aircraft carrier. But a raid against them are not second or third class powers also. Japan is one of the top 10 military powers in the world, and they're capable of rearming in just a few years. They just launched their helicopter
Are they
carrier.
ready now?
Yeah, which...
Japan, is it ready now?
They have a good air force that can give a good fight to any power in the world right now. India is also in the picture, and India just announced its own indigenous aircraft carrier that will be operational by 2018. They've already shown their flag. A flotilla passed through.
Sila lang gumawa, no?
Yeah.
Naiiba.
They have the Indian Ocean. They have a very sophisticated navy, one of the top 10 in the world also. So if China right now is ranked number 3, and the U.S. is ranked number 1.
Japan being number 2.
Well, not exactly, maybe top 10. And then India is also in the top 10, and Great Britain is in the top 10, and these countries would be in alliance. What the number 2 or
Walang laban.
number 3, we'll have to think it over.
Okay, we're going to have to take a short break. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the bottom of the hour. Stay with us if you want to learn more so that when you do critical thought and you do discuss this with other issues, or you go on what we call an FB rage, because many seem to be doing this. Nagagalit, and they put all these scandalous words, and all these funny words on FB and whatnot. At least know what you're talking about. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Tinanong ko sa FB ko.
Hello, we're back. Our topic for tonight is xenophobia. With us, we have Congressman Roilo Golez, former NSA as well. A quick note, about a week ago, I was in a party with different Caucasians, different nationalities. May conflict between a Frenchman tsaka an American. Nagsagutan yung dalawa. Habang nagsasagutan, inaantay ko kung magsasabat yung dalawa kung mag-aaway. Palakihan ng boses, palakihan ng big words and whatnot. But wala nangyari, nag-split up. Maganda-ganda naman. Mature, yun ang maganda doon. Kasi may edad na rin yung dalawa. When I was leaving that night, I was talking to somebody else. And I was right. I was given a different perspective. Kung Pilipino yan, kung dalawa nagsagutan, nagkakilitean, nagkagalitan in a social gathering. Pag Pinoy yan, lako, baka yung unang bote nakita sa isang tabi, baka binasag na o sununtok na yon. Ganun talaga ang Pilipino, no? So, iniisip mo, ang Pilipino ba palaban? Hindi ba atras sa mga yan? Well, as we discussed in our earlier, on part 1 of this program, we've been known to fight and keep up regardless of the outcome. And somehow, one way or the other, we're still the Republic of the Philippines today. We may have lost terribly in the last wars because of the brutal strength, the brute strength of our enemies, but nevertheless, having to stand up and to be able to sing our national anthem to date, I guess proves that there is some type of resiliency over what we call fatalism. Congressman Golez, tayo ba kung magkabakbakan, would you call it fatalistic to stand up to China? Or as we play our cards right, should our government, our political and our politics play it correctly, the authorities that are today, getting the allies, which is what we're doing now, forming the alliances, we can stand up to China regardless of how strong the perception is of how strong they are around the world today.
Well, katulad sinabi kanina, I don't think we'll be standing alone here. Because there will be natural alliances. You know, common enemies, they trigger friendships, alliances. And right now, who are the victims of this push, outward push by China? Vietnam is one of them. They lost people already. In 1979, China tried to teach them a lesson. China lost about 20,000 soldiers in that land war. But of course, in the Paracels, it was a mismatch. It was an amphibious operation, I understand. Vietnam lost manpower there. And then in 1988, there was a clash between the Vietnamese Navy and the Chinese Navy, and they were mauled. Vietnam was mauled. They lost 2 ships and about 70 sailors.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's history of blood letting here. We're not talking of a benign power here that would handle it diplomatically. So we have to prepare for this. But so far, so good. All the exchanges, just like what you witnessed in that party, are verbal and not physical. And I hope it's going to be like that. Because as I said,
Mali yung bakbakan kagad, di ba? Mali
saka transparent na ngayon eh. The last class was in 1988. It's out there in the middle of nowhere, not covered by CNN. Now, everybody's watching this.
Any movement.
CNN, GNN, or whatever. BBC. Now, you cannot do it alone. You have to have a semblance of justness in order to be projected as a just country also. You cannot just grab territory and then use physical force now, especially in the South China Sea. This is a well-monitored area. This is not in the middle of nowhere anymore. So at least to that extent, it's like a weakling being confronted by a bully with the barangay, the police, and everybody observing what's happening.
But the interests don't necessarily remain the same. You said earlier, it's military, it's political, it's natural resources, it's naval, it's strategic, whatever. Multiple, but every country that allies with us, kanya-kanyang interest yan,
Oh, yeah, of
basically.
course, yeah.
Ano interest ng Amerika? China?
Well, I think power politics. They want to maintain the balance of power. They don't want another power to become too big.
So cripple
The other
China.
one is freedom of
Navigation.
But at the same time, they're engaging China. If you look at the trade engagement between the two, their economic entanglement is huge.
It's very
I'm using this. This is made in China. The brand is American, but made in China. My phones are made in China, but carrying American brands.
American brands.
That's how it is. The trade, the commerce, the economic engagement will continue, but at the same time, people are still thinking strategically, thinking 10 years from now, 20 years from now, trying to maintain that balance of power.
Can we say that it's the military politics that drive this crazy, that actually have conflict, that actually result in conflict and blood, rather than just trading in commerce, intellectual property rights, etc.? Or is it the military generals that we need to fear? Because these are the people, for example, that are trying to... I mean, is there reason for China to come to our shores, which is what they're doing? May nakukuha ba sila na pwede nila ibalik? For example, mga minerals natin that they require right now na makukuha na nila. Or this is all future positioning?
Oh, they need a lot of minerals from us. Nickel, for example.
Nickel, yeah.
Even food, agriculture. In fact, in my second term, when I returned this was from 2007 to 2010, one of the raging debates at that time was they wanted to lease 2 million hectares of land
Mindanao.
for food production. And of course, I was one of those who opposed this.
Hindi naman natuloy yun, ano?
Hindi natuloy because it became quite a big issue. So, yan ang mga pinitingnan ng mga ano ngayon, no? Nickel, resources.
So, ubusan ng natural resources, basically.
And right now, there are two different ways that these two major countries are making decisions. In the case of America, their decision-making process is very transparent. They have an active Congress. The State Department, the Department of Defense cannot do it alone without intervention or interference from the Senate and from the House of Representatives and from media. But in China, it is opaque.
Yeah, wala.
That is the problem. And I understand that right now, there's a certain dynamic between the civilians. I understand that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs there is not as active as the Department of State in the U.S. In other words, the military establishment overpowers their Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That's what I'm reading.
Standalone.
In the case of,
that's the point I was trying to drive at, the military crazies, so to speak.
But then among themselves, there are also different schools of thought. Some are more attuned to a global approach to make sure that they come out smelling
continues.
like a rose, a China on the rise, but a good neighbor country. But some would like to assert their power. Every now and then you have a renegade general, a maverick general, even a retired general, speaking for a study group in China, talking of invading the Philippines, which it can never happen here. It will never happen in the United States because the moment a general there would speak on policy, he'd be fired immediately.
Correct.
Same in the Philippines.
Immediately.
But there, every now and then, I don't know whether they're intentionally allowed to do that or even pushed to do that to test the water.
Let's talk about our current government. Are we doing the right thing? Are you comfortable? Do you feel safe? Are you guaranteed your rights as a Filipino and that the government is protecting you with all that they're doing today? Are they doing everything the right way?
I think we're doing it the right way. It cannot be a perfect system. It cannot be, the decision-making process cannot be perfect. But I think so far, so good. We are assertive. We have, I think the President, the Department of Foreign Affairs have basically said the right thing with respect to the South China Sea. We are not submissive, but at the same time, we are not hostile. We're not aggressive beyond our means.
We're not hot-headed.
We're not hot-headed. We're stressing the rule of law. In fact, that's the reason why we brought this out up to the ITLOS.
Yes, the ITLOS.
So that this can be resolved legally by international law. But at the same time, we are also building alliances. Just like, that's how it should be.
Building alliances meaning we may no longer lose Scarborough Shoal with Americans. Sambales na yan, magkakadikit lahat yan. Subic is right there.
Usapan kasi pag ginawa yan, no? I remember, 10 years ago, I was talking with a former Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the Philippines, and he said that that's a red line. Scarborough Shoal is a red line. You militarize that for the other country, that's a red line. We tolerated mischief reef, but that one is different because that is a dagger really pointed at Manila Bay and Zambales.
Too close.
Our economic assets are there.
The economic assets.
I've always said that any military undertaking must be connected to the economy. The military is not a stand-alone entity. It is always an entity that is just like a security guard. You don't hire a security guard just for the sake of security. You want him there
Perception.
to protect your economic assets.
But also the perception that there is some type of security. Because the security guards today really is more perception, more than anything. There has been a streamline or a sustaining what we call graft and corruption in the economy, be it in Congress, be it in the public sector or in the private sector. Meaning it's endemic, it's entrenched. What I'm trying to point out is even in the military, there has been graft and corruption, whether it be boots, helmets, ammunition, guns, or big armaments. There has always been some type of corruption, which is why we've never been able to really develop the armed forces services. Won't this affect our situation today and the continuing graft and corruption? Because the institution of the military has been already demoralized and already been, it's endemic. Nakapasok na the rot, the metastasization of corruption is very progressive. How do we build the military, even though the budgets are given by Congress, when the funds are being taken by its current leaders?
Well, first of all, I disagree that the military is weak because of graft and corruption. Of course, it affected.
So mali yung perception na yun, mali.
No, the military is weak right now because that appeared to be the choice of national leaders in the past. Instead of guns, they opted to butter. Instead of guns, plowshares, just like what Samuelson, the economist, had always been saying. And
agriculture over education,
that
over
was
military.
The decision made. But now, because at that time, there were no serious external threats to talk about. Only internal threats like the CPP-NPA, secessionist movement, that could be addressed through economic development.
You don't believe that corruption is endemic also in the military? You mean that because corruption seems to be endemic, meaning it's literally everywhere. You mean, do you feel your perception is the military is spared?
No, I think it's an exaggeration, especially today.
Okay.
As I said, all the deficiencies in our military capability are because of decisions in the past, by choice. We chose, because our economy is bigger than North Korea. But look at North Korea's military capability.
1,200,000 soldiers.
If they could do it, we can also do it, but at a certain sacrifice.
The people starve.
If we really want to have the same kind of military that Singapore has, I think we can do it.
Kaya.
kayang gawin. Malaysia, ganun din.
Oh, Malaysia.
Kasi,
kaya.
you know, I looked at a ranking. There's a study group that conduct, and they publish this in the internet, in their website. The ranking of the Philippines, considering all the resources, the position, our population, our economic, our GNP, we were ranked number 31 in the world out of more than 200.
Yes.
And we were ranked higher than Malaysia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because of our sheer population.
And Thailand, because of our,
Our land mass.
resources.
Our resources.
All the things
Yes,
that,
yes.
that are needed to make a country militarily powerful. In other words, we have the resources to even become more powerful than number 31, if we decide to do so. But of course, there will be trade-off.
Yes, trade-off.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So
yes.
Malaysia has a very superb military
Yes.
because that is their choice. We can do the same thing. Singapore has a very superb military, and the reason for that is they have threats in the
Everywhere.
neighborhood also. Taiwan, of course, Taiwan has a very strong economy. But I've
They're
always,
money lenders. Yes,
yeah. Now, what I'm saying now is that perhaps this is going to be a blessing in disguise also, that we are feeling this external threat. Because number one, it
We're
will
waking
be
up.
a unifying force. And if you look at the countries that are threatened in various directions, most of them ended up strong because of that unification, and they seem to work harder. Korea, Singapore, Israel, Taiwan, all of them facing serious threats.
Well, in Congress, you were always for improving the military, the budgets, all these times, all these years.
With reason. of
With
course,
reason.
yeah. Like now, no. To develop our capability to defend ourselves, we cannot match whoever is our expected adversary, frigate for frigate, plane for plane. We have to do it asymmetric. We are protecting our.
How do you mean asymmetric?
Asymmetric, meaning that we have to think of other weapon systems, cheaper, cost-effective. For example, we want to protect our exclusive economic zone, 200-mile exclusive economic zone. If some powers would like to intrude into our exclusive economic zone, we have to develop defense systems that can defend up to 200 nautical miles. What's that? Maybe missiles.
Missiles,
Yeah.
missiles.
Yeah. So one missile may cost a missile system may cost about $150 million. But
One.
No, one missile system.
A
No, I'm
system,
talking-
hindi
yeah,
bala.
system. And you're talking of the radar, control system, monitoring, and of course the missiles, maybe 100 missiles can do it. And that will be enough to threaten anyone that will be adventurous to go into our
Ilang billion
exclusive
ang
economic zone.
approximate
China
mo?
is applying the same thing. They know that they cannot match the United States aircraft carrier for aircraft carrier. The U.S. has about 12 aircraft carriers. They have one which is not yet fully operational. But what they're doing is they have these hypersonic missiles, anti-ship missiles that they claim can hit an aircraft carrier from about 1,500 to
Grabe.
maybe 2,000 kilometers away.
Away.
Yeah, so a $5 billion aircraft carrier
Can go
with
down.
5,000 can be hit by a missile that costs about $40 million. So that's what I call asymmetric.
Baliktad.
Just like
So strategic purchases
you know, the David and
of
Goliath
defense,
was
yes.
an asymmetric battle.
Correct,
David used a stone, yung
And a sling,
tirador niya, a sling, as against the very expensive weapons, armor,
And
spear,
brute-
and
the
sword
brute force.
of
Goliath.
Goliath. Oh.
Congressman, you know, ang bilis. 1 hour sitting with you is really bitin-bitin. I'll need to ask you to give an exit message to our viewers, who I think at this point probably agree and feel confident that, yes, we are in the right direction, and all the conversations, all the points that we brought out make them feel a little more confident. Problem is, I hope that they rid themselves of the fatalistic attitudes to want to jump on a boat and go to China and fight, which is really stupid. how would you address our viewers to keep calm, or what should they do, how should they think while this xenophobia is going around?
Well, number one, I think it is not xenophobia because it is not unreasonable. It is not without basis because we are seeing overt moves of China. They've already encroached into our exclusive economic zone. They've grabbed it physically. They're patrolling part of our exclusive economic zone. They have already occupied and are now controlling Scarborough Shoal or Bajo de Masinloc. There have been some extreme warnings from some maverick individuals inside China. But we are on the right track. The government is forging alliances. The government is doing everything reasonable to have a respectable capability for our military, and we are on the right track. Without overspending, I don't think we should overspend as far as the military is concerned. We're developing our economy because the best insurance, security insurance, is a strong economy, as shown by so many countries, even in our neighborhood. So, but we have to, the public must support this. We cannot have an internal debate right now because that will be giving a wrong signal as far as the other entities are concerned.
The alliances.
Yeah, the alliances. So, to me, the alliance is very important. That's part of the history of mankind. Okay. Very natural.
Thank you very much, sir. We hope you've enjoyed the program. So anything that you've learned basically is we're on the right track. And the most important part is there is a unity that is required currently and right now, because as a former congressman and NSA consultant, hindi pwedeng tayo maglalaban at nagkakagulo kasi it will send the wrong messages. So I guess the word modality was properly used today. Mutuality, well, it's called interests. And transparency, that's exactly what we're doing right here for you. Maraming salamat po. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you very much, Congress. You are what you watch.